All good.
Great. All right. All right. Can you see my full screen?
We sure can.
Great. This work is really, while I am embedded into state government, this work is really, government cannot do it alone, nor has it ever been able to do it alone. So how do we do it better together? So I'm just going to ground this conversation that, yes, I come into this space as a bureaucrat, which is really someone, this is the legit definition, that somebody who is concerned about procedural correctness at the expense of people's needs. Like that's the real definition. So we coined a new term on my team, and it's advocrat. Those who are in government and those who really want better results for the people we serve. Uh, as David already shared, the two biggest existential threats to well-being, you mentioned the environment or the climate, and poverty and inequality. And when you overlay GIS maps or maps, those communities are the same in every state, every country. So how do we, as both CBOs, volunteers, state, other federal governments, how do we start working together? Because people's lives are multidimensional, yet our streams of service, streams of bureaucracy are not. They're all linear. So as I shared, and please like raise your hand and David will manage I want this to be a conversation because this is super awkward to present in a virtual space. So I hope that if you have questions as they come along, raise your hand. But the heart and soul of this work is our steering committee. As I shared, we came together with all of those sectors 6 years ago, and we also centered lived expertise, and we call that 22-person group our steering committee. So I really want to ground it when you center community and you co-create. David, I love the fact that you said that when you co-create solutions and policies, it changes the process and it really becomes more equitable. It's really participatory democracy. So here are some quotations from them. It wasn't about the single process, it was about relationships. It shelved the us and them and it turned the work into a we. And if it weren't for the steering committee, this plan that was created that took 3 years to create would be a plan that sat on a shelf. And because of the how we did this plan towards justice or well-being, that is why Washington State has had a lot of momentum, and it's really galvanized this work and has turned it into many things, which I will touch upon. So as I shared, the poverty reduction work group was created, and this might be, I've heard from many folks that this was different because this was a request by our governor. Create a plan, don't do it by yourself, bring all these people together, center lived expertise, and provide a plan. That was the ask. So we got together monthly. Imagine bringing 80 people together every month. It was like planning a wedding. And if any of you have planned a wedding or done a big party, who wants to do that every single month? Not me, but we did. And we had all of these folks, and we would co-create a plan. The steering committee, the 22-person steering committee said, we want to meet, we don't trust you. You've done all of generations of harm. We want to meet independently of you and then come to your meetings. So we're creating our own culture in our group. I want you to know 7 years later, they are still meeting quarterly, and I am meeting with them, with my team. That's the relationship and the strength of this work. So needless to say, to do this work, and I'm going to run through this because I really want to spend more time with discussion. I think that's where, the real kernels of potential action and alignment partnership can happen. But we had to step back. We did a typical, okay, let's address X issue. Let's say homelessness. Let's say healthcare. We had to step back and do a root cause analysis and really address history and truth, power and influence, values and belief, narrative. Also talk about the many policies that have gotten us to where we are now. So I do want to address that. While the plan was called the 10-year plan to reduce poverty, it's taken us 300 years to get here, and it's going to possibly take us 300 years to undo it. So this plan is iterative in nature and how we address it and track progress to date. So obviously the goal is mobility, but really when we talk to community members and we go to hard to reach, corners of Washington state, we say, what does economic justice, what does well-being mean to you? It's about, I want my family to be okay. I want our health to be okay. I don't want to have 3 jobs and still struggle to make ends meet. I want to be okay going into the grocery store. So it's really bringing the humanity back into this work. I'm happy to share this plan that was released in 2021. I can share that in the chat, but we have over 60 recommendations in 8 strategies. And so that is now how the state has been showcasing progress to date. And we are working across the agencies with their data leads, their program leads, their legislative leads, and their communications leads to bring this work together in order to get to that North Star of well-being. And last year, I'm about to update this slide. As of last year, we had 60 recommendations. We had 110 policy actions that took place because of this work. That was as of January. And the governor's budget was just released yesterday. So I'm about to update this slide, and it's pretty exciting. I'm going to pass that. Here's the map of where we've been. I'm just going to pass that, but it talks about working with all of the partners. A lot of people struggle to see what a generative economy could look like. So we put together this map, and you can see that it's rooted with the environment. So often we track we do outcome work. But if you don't look at what's in the soil or community conditions, you are not going to change this to get to, equitable outcomes. And under each of these categories, the state, the Fed, and locally, we can track all of this data. So I will get back into, if you can give me a thumbs up, how many of you are data nerds, that would be helpful to know, because you are my people, if that's the case. So last year, it's always good, like doing policy work and doing this work is incremental change. And so we also have to celebrate how hard it is, but also celebrate the successes. Last year, we had $1 billion invested. I can go into details about this. We have the first bill in the United States to compensate live expertise. It is a best practice now, and we have guidance around how we do this. That's Senate Bill 5793. We are now seen as a best practice in certain, policy and practice with the Aspen Institute. Our work has been showcased. The governor created a sub-cabinet on intergenerational poverty because of the success of how we've done this work. And our team, the economic justice team, manages that. We come together to co-create budgets in partnership with communities. We also work together. So we work every other week on that. We showcase this work to legislators, not just to agency leads, but we always bring it back to the community to get us a pulse on how we are doing and what we need to do next as far as that iterative piece. Our community said cash is something they really need help with. And when COVID hit, cash was a huge tool for reducing poverty, especially child poverty. And our state was the first one to create a statewide basic income feasibility study, where we again centered those who stand to benefit the most. And we asked them, what do you want? First, we taught them what a basic income is, asked them, what do they want? Who should be the target audience? How much? Where? And while it didn't pass the legislature last year, we are now going again this year to do this. So we've been asked to speak nationally around how did we start with the people to create a study rather than start with statisticians and researchers, but start with people. So it really changes the story, changes the outcome. So real quick, there's alignment between environmental justice and poverty. Environmental justice in most states are housed in like the Department of Natural Resources, Department of Health. And there's a lot of work around that. So I will go into that, do a little bit of a touch point around that in a smidge, but I know I need to wrap up here like 10 minutes. We're also big on decolonizing data. Data has not been used to showcase the strengths or the assets of communities. It's really been used to showcase the deficits. And Abigail Echohawk, who sat on our committee, said, we definitely want that data to tell the strengths of our community. So we are asset framed. We did all the training. And now we are working with communities on a well-being project, which I'll get into, about what does well-being mean to you? What are the data? What are the definitions? And how do we help you track that? So therefore, we can also use that to inform policies and procedures at the state level. And they can do it too because they're getting the data right away. So that's really exciting as well. Okay, I've already talked about that. Where we are now. We are continuing. This is May. We got together with all of the environmental justice coalitions, the poverty coalitions, and the economic justice coalitions. We had about 150 people convene in May to talk about what does it look like to come together and utilize a co-governance structure or an assembly structure. And so just yesterday, and so I haven't been able to update this, we co-created a budget request and a line item for the Climate Commitment Act dollars, which are funneled through our Department of Health. And they asked that the economic justice team facilitate that. And we were just awarded $1 million yesterday. So it's in the governor's budget to be the first assembly model by the state to really bolster community capacity to co-create solutions at the state level. So that's pretty exciting. So as I shared about that co-governance, we worked with community to define what does that look like for them. So this is what community, we had statewide poverty action network, poverty reduction, statewide agency, front and center, and environmental justice coalition, and the People's Economy Lab, which is a participatory democracy organization, co-create this with community members, which now we are also acting upon. So the cornerstones, and again, I'm happy to share all of this. One of the cornerstones was community assemblies, bolstering capacity, and data. You know, what is equitable data? So I'm going to fly through this because I'm sure you can look up what community assemblies are. But I also want to talk about accountability. Like so often when you're thinking about partnering with the government, you don't. To be perfectly candid, who thinks about, oh, I want to partner with the government? So we do have a tracking tool where we can showcase progress to date. With funding the steering committee, which we started in the Department of Social and Health Services, now it's in commerce. And so we share this work. So we're distributing it across, across the board. The sub-cabinet, I can showcase how we are tracking potential bills across many agencies and legislators during session, as well as tracking what our decision packages. That's our budget builds from all of our agencies. What are the budgets we are going toward that are aligned with well-being? What's our ask to the governor? And then when the governor's budget comes out, which was yesterday, what was funded, what wasn't funded, and now legislators are calling me saying, where's that list so we can see what wasn't funded, so then we can advocate for that during the next session. So it's this moving engine around economic justice, health justice, racial justice, and environmental justice. So I'm happy to showcase any of that to you, but obviously you can see where we're going. This is, again, coming from the steering committee, what they've asked for. So the cliff effect, all of us are dealing with that. unconditional cash, continuing to partner with decisions, continue to partner with communities in decision making. Okay. I'm sorry I'm talking so much. We already know everybody has this. Poverty isn't a line, it's a tight knot of social issues and constructs, and that's from Matt Desmond from Poverty in America. And we love this visual because that's what we're all dealing with. It was not made, the system was created and it was not made for those it serves. Again, this is how Washington State and how we're showcasing to legislators, agency leadership, and community what we're doing, what's in progress, how it's aligned on the continuum of prevention, access, stability, mobility, and wealth, and ideas for the future. So we can see in a pretty picture, because legislators like pictures, where this goes. Maybe you like pictures too. Okay, I'm gonna pass the theory of aligned contributions. And this is where we are right now in our state. We meet every other week with the legislative teams from all the agencies to talk about what's progress on our well-being approach. We have the communications teams. And now what about data? And what's that research justice lens? And this is what it will look like, whether it's a population result or insert whatever metric you want. What are the unique contributions of each agency towards that? Because we are rich in data, but how we work together looks different, as well as centering CBOs and lived expertise. So here's an example of what it could look like. And we just showed this morning to the community-based organizations. So if we say the percentage of Washingtonians at or above the self-sufficiency standard, what are the program metrics in each agency that will feed into that population level result? So here we have an example, and here we need to build out what the CBO data is, what the community, if they're like, we don't care about that metric, we care about this. So how are we working together to actually change the system and work together towards population level results? And that's where we're starting to operationalize this approach, which is really exciting. We've done the legislative approach, the communications approach. Even though that's internal, we've done a really bad job talking about this work nationally because we're too busy doing it. We've created how that work can then populate a form that agency leadership can use and community can use to continue to hold us and legislators accountable. Again, example metrics, what we do for internal agencies, like how we're asking them to support, put this in your strategic plans, continue to work with us, which is all happening in Washington State. I can text almost every single agency and racial and ethnic commission at this point because of this work. Theory of change, for those of you who are interested in theory of change, but I'll pass this because it's nerdy. And then updates in the last 2 weeks. We're about to get $100,000, fingers crossed, from the RWJF, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, to help build that what is well-being data with communities. The Environmental Justice Coalition didn't get the $3 million they requested, but did get $1 million to work around economic and climate justice efforts with the community assemblies. I was asked to speak to the Administration of Children and Families, HRSA, CDC, and EPA about how this work is happening, because they said, oh, no, we partner with community. I'm like, no, you contract. Like, my job, I don't have anybody come see me because I'm government. As a true public steward, I go to every single community. They will never come to me because government has done so much harm. So how do I start using my own awareness and not continue to perpetuate harm? And then aligning with the governor's budget for all of their asks. But real quick before I end, I do want to say that this work is hard, it's messy, and we really approach it where I will make mistakes. I will say the wrong thing. Somebody else will say the wrong thing. And when we disappoint one another, how will we show up the next day because we care so much about well-being for Washingtonians and for California, for the nation? And everyone, whether it's legislators, whether it's agency leadership, whether it's community, they're like, okay, we get that because we have such a cancel culture. And those of us in this room who are doing this work, it's exhausting. And it's burnout with cancel culture. How do we acknowledge that and continue to support and bolster our work and move forward while acknowledging, hey, I messed up. Let's continue to work and fail forward. So anyway, hopefully that makes some sense. David, I'm sorry. I just spoke at you for a half hour. I'm super
No, it was
uncomfortable.
great.
So
Yeah, and I stand by what I said earlier. You're amazing. I mean, not only the tenacity of organizing all those groups and all those people, but presenting the information the way you do, tracking all that information, the way you coordinate it all, and also a lot of the language that you use about how to keep things very mindfully centered about bringing people in. So I have quite a few questions, but I figure I will turn it over to the group. So I would ask if you could raise your virtual hand, since there's more than one screen of people, that would be great. So Michelle, please. And if you wouldn't mind just shortly introducing what you do too, that'd be great.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Michelle Molina. I'm in the Los Angeles area and I'm an evaluator. So I help organizations use data to think about the work they do and identify places to improve and or adapt so they can achieve outcomes. Sounds like you're doing a lot of really cool work, Lindsay. I'd be curious, and it sounds like there's a lot of moving components and it took years to get there. I'm curious to hear if you were to start this over again, what are some of the things you would do first, maybe things you would do differently? Like I guess overall, where would you start if someone were interested in doing something like this in their community?
yeah, that's a great question. I think while imperfect, our process, I would probably do the same. I would start like the lesson not learned. I said we brought people together and we were quick to say, all right, let's solve this, rather than we immediately went and got a facilitator because it couldn't be from community, it couldn't be from government. So we got a facilitator, really an expert facilitator and a racial equity facilitator to talk all about this. Because when you do, have you done the 5 whys or the 7 whys? When you break it down, it really breaks down to racial injustice and oppressive systems. So we had her at all of the meetings to really facilitate. We also did caucusing. Eventually, we got into like we did a white caucus and a people of color caucus with that 80-person group. So even when we were caucusing, there was positional power in there. We had people from the governor's office and people were like, I'm not talking, that's going to ruin my funding. So we really had to level set to say, this won't hurt. We have to be transparent and vulnerable. So I would say our first 3 months was really uncomfortable. It's still uncomfortable, but we are so like we are in it, we are partnered, and it's yeah. So anyway, I would probably not do the first 3 months how we did. We should have gotten a consultant right away.
Thank
But
you.
boy, we messed up a lot.
You've done amazing. Julie.
Yes, hi. I'm sorry to stay off camera. I'm in a car but love this presentation, Lindsay, and hi to the group. I'm Julie Rusk. I'm here in Los Angeles, specifically in Santa Monica, and have done very similar local work in Santa Monica, which I'd love to share lessons and get into some of the weeds. But
Yeah.
my question is a really simple one. Who has your back?
Julie, that's really lovely. Do you know what? I have an amazing, like the economic justice team. There's just a group of 5 of us in the secretary's
Uh-huh.
office because that's where we sit. There was like, oh no, they need to be in the governor's office, but then we're partisan. So they chose to put
Right.
us in the largest state agency, which is the Department of Social and Health Services. But our team is really, we are very thoughtful. Like when we have a hard day, we can communicate frequently and often. So because of that culture, I have
Uh-huh.
their back, they have mine when we mess up and when we're doing great. And I really feel super supported. And now we really have a lot of leverage and influence across the state because of how we've done our book of business.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've got really good practices internally of taking care of yourself and each other, and that makes a lot of sense. And just from the little bit I understood from your presentation, which really was great, I loved. I'm sorry I came a little late, but the first one I saw, I think, was about when you said being a bureaucrat, which that's a whole discussion unto itself that I'd love to have at some point too. But I guess what I'm also really wondering is, you know, kind of politically, how the sort of political landscape works. I mean, maybe it's that you're really building grassroots support. I mean, I really appreciate the value of co-creating solutions and partnerships and just the practices and approaches that I do think build in lots of really thoughtful, I'm going to say, quote unquote, non-traditional ways of people having your back and having the back of the work. But I'm just also wondering if there's any particular political leaders or partnerships of leaders. I really liked what you said about the partnership with commerce and the health and human services, and because I think those kinds of bureaucratic partnerships are super important. But if you could just say a little bit more about politically who has your back again, hope that makes sense, and thank you.
Sure. Well, I get a lot of questions like, do you have Republicans and Democrats and libertarians? So I get, and that's how they say it to me. Well, do you have this on your? Yeah, we have everybody. Like that's where we are nonpartisan. And when you raise the economic floor, it is better for everybody. It's better for communities, better for business, better for you name it. It's better for everybody. And so this is a little awkward for me. I am not with somebody from my steering committee. Usually I bring them, but I'm out of budget, so I couldn't bring them with me because I want to compensate them for their expertise. So we do have people from across the aisles doing this work, which has really brought the work to where it is now. Sure, we don't agree on all sorts of things, like the community really want reproductive health and justice in our plan, which it is. And that's kind of a sticking point where some folks do not agree with that, legislators specifically. So we are keeping it in there because we were intentional about flipping power in this work. Like nothing went in that plan without their buy-in and without their total support. So there are other plans that are adjacent, but everyone goes back to the this plan that we created because it was with so many partners.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Aaron, glad you were able to make it after all. Go ahead.
Yeah, happy to be here. Yeah, I'm Arend. I primarily work with the Equal Vote Coalition, who's an allied coalition to the Wellbeing Economy, and I enjoy keeping up with what you all are doing here. But my question is, if you could elaborate on how you select the steering committee, how do you determine which communities to reach out to, and how do you make sure that all the right voices are represented in that committee?
Yeah, we get this question a lot, and there is no perfect committee. There is no perfect process. And I can go into details about how we got called out about it, but we did not choose the committee. The Statewide Poverty Action Network, they said, we don't want government choosing it. Ask a nonprofit to choose. And our request was that it was a majority people of color caucus, and we wanted statewide breadth. So we wanted, the tribes, we wanted urban, rural, LGBTQ, elderly, disabled. So we had some, but only 22. And when you think 22, how many things you're missing, it's incredible. So when we were going around after our first draft was released, we were in a community and they said, well, do you have a Black female trans voice represented on this committee? And I said, we didn't ask that. And they said, start over. None of us are going to support this. And so then the group that was with me, who had helped create it and worked with their communities, were really like, we had to like pull back. They were crying, like, because their voice and their work wasn't good enough. So it's just this iterative, yes, we hear you, we need to do better. And just because one voice wasn't there, does that mean it's not good enough? So it's this continuous iteration and working, acknowledging, yes, we didn't ask that. So anyway, we did not pick the people, and maybe we should have, maybe we shouldn't have. That's how it is. And it's really been, we now have a Black female trans on the poverty reduction work group and all as well. But during that year where we didn't, it was a little bit very hard for certain nonprofit communities, but not to say we haven't had a lot of hard conversations. I think every day. I think one day this year I came home and told my kid, I didn't have a hard conversation today. One.
I really respect how authentic you are with describing all the work it takes to make all this happen. Aaron, was there anything else, or you're good?
Yes, thank you for answering that. That was I'm good.
Yeah, I'm sure we all get into what the community has called the oppression Olympics. No, I'm the most oppressed. No, I'm the most oppressed. Or I'm the hurt most. And so how do you massage that, acknowledge their hurt, and continue to move forward?
Yeah, it's certainly a difficult problem to solve.
Yeah. Who knew I was going to be a social worker in my job?
Greg, I see your hand up, but I'm going to ask a quick question first, which is along the lines of your transparency and the language that you use. How do you see this being transferable to other states? That I can't imagine some of the language that you're using here would fly in a whole host of states that I'm thinking of. I wanted to, of course, and maybe, or to a slightly different angle, are other states coming and taking a look at what you're doing and trying to figure out how they can do the same?
Yes, I've had a lot of states call me about certain aspects, like how do you do a contract together? How are you co-creating a budget line item? And the language I'm using comes from community. That's the language that they've asked me to use. And so when we flipped the switch and other communities are coming in, okay. And so that's where our baseline is. So it's not about, you may not like my language, that's okay. But this is the language the communities have asked us to use.
Got it. Thank you. Well, I'm going to let Richard go first since Greg stepped away.
Yes, we're one of the states that did approach Lindsay about how they're doing it in Washington, because Tennessee is one of 3 states, Washington and Michigan, where the state government has taken the lead on a statewide poverty focus. And so we're into our second year, or actually closer to our 3rd year now. And of course, they've did it for longer than that. But it's very fascinating to see the different approaches from the different states. But what fascinated us about Washington is that this was very much how you're engaging with the other state agencies in your work, because in our state, we're not doing that. And so we're very interested in how you're doing that. Our state is taking a grassroots community approach. The state gave 6 regions the money to, you go out and figure it out, and then we'll see what you learn, and we'll come back and see how we can apply it statewide. So it's a very different approach, but only the Department of Human Services is involved primarily in this. What's going to happen, we've already identified it, as you're helping people out of poverty, they're going to hit the benefit cliffs where they start losing Medicaid and start losing SNAP and food stamps and housing and Head Start. And so that's where the agencies are going to be more involved. We believe, okay, we need to come up with a bridge, for people to, because we'll have people that turn down better paying jobs because they don't want to lose Medicaid. So, but we appreciate what you're doing and learning from each other on these things.
Thank you, Richard. Good to see you. Greg.
Hey, hi guys. I'm Greg Apodaca. I'm with Community 2.0. 2 quick questions. First, I'm working with the City of Los Angeles and helping them apply artificial intelligence to environmental solutions and challenges. And so I'm wondering if you're working with cities or how that can be talked about, or how I can get involved in that. And then second, is the representation of your 22 folks on this steering committee. And excuse me for being late, so I hope you haven't already addressed this, but I incorporated, quit my job 5 years ago to fight for climate solutions, and I chose to form as a community benefit corporation and not a nonprofit. I've started a couple of nonprofits and gone down that route, and I thought that a for-profit community benefit corporation might be the better path these days. So I hope that we include business persons at some point in this as well, not necessarily vilify businesses and hold them as the culprits here, but instead embrace forward-thinking individuals as part of the solution. So can you talk to me about that?
Sure. We have had business, and one of the early groups that was on board with the creation was the Washington Business Roundtable, who represented a lot of Washington state businesses. Not big tech. We were just talking about what are some of the gaps. And so that's one of our moving forward. How do we really partner with the tech agencies who are located in Washington state? But so we have had a lot of business, as well as the workforce development councils. Every single workforce development council has come to our meetings and has partnered with us, so we can track progress to date with what they are doing in partnership with business, and what's that employment pipeline, and skilling up folks. You did have a first question.
It was about working with cities, and in particular.
Oh yes, thank you. Yeah, we definitely are working with some cities and some municipalities about, the state doesn't have all the right answers. Like, the most unique solutions are in communities and those who are closest to the solutions. So we are in our matrix where we track progress to date, tracking what cities and municipalities are doing around the 10-year plan to showcase what they are doing. So in this document, you don't care about what's happening near Seattle, but you want to know what's happening on the east side in Spokane. You can go in and create, like, your viewer, like, what's happening in Spokane around the 10-year plan, and see who's doing what. Or if you want to see who's doing what about the benefits cliff, you can do your own search. So we're in our beta phase right now with Smartsheet, so that everyone can use it. And so communities can hold themselves accountable and hold us accountable, and tell us about opportunities we don't know about. Because, we only know what we know. So there's so much we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Great. And I hope you guys are using AI. It's the most powerful tool out there. And
yeah, we are working with WATEC, who I know many of you are from LA. So we just have Irene Vidyanti, who worked on the LA poverty plan. She's now at our in our WATEC, and there's a lot of AI components. And so the head of WATEC and I were just in Victoria talking about that and how we work together to address this.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Ramin. Good to see your photo, at least, but good to have you here with us. Oh, look at that.
I'll say hello.
Oh, it's a
and I got a
one.
special guest, little guy. I'm
best.
functions here. This is my 5-month-old son.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. I'll echo Lindsay, the celebration of all the amazing work. And I missed the first 5 minutes, so it's possible these questions relate to that. but echoing some of the earlier questions around like, what were the political conditions that enabled you and your office to really go out and do a lot of what I see through the lens of like acting as a backbone entity and organization to help shepherd the multi-stakeholder work? And like, what's the resourcing look like? And because so often co-design, gosh, it's everybody's goal, but we all know it takes more time and it costs more money. And getting that buy-in from the folks with the purse strings is so hard. So would love to hear about the journey there.
That's such a good question. You know what? I never talk about that. And now I'm like, oh, I need to add that to my slide because woof, loaded. I think the success was the governor told us, we want you to do this, both sides of the aisle, business, now do it. And so the resourcing, so I think that was like the biggest piece. So like 10 agencies, he mandated 10 agencies to show up. And then of course, if it's a gubernatorial thing, we had business, we had nonprofit, we had tribes. We're like, okay, what is this? And then it turned into something. But it really,
and that was totally out of their leadership and conviction. This was part of their vision for,
and we had the governor's staff showing up. And so it was a powerful group. And the 22-person steering committee was really intimidated until you might have missed the slide where they said, we got to know them. Like, I know about your kids, Lindsay, you know about mine. Yeah. It's shelved the us and them, and it's a we now. Like, we are so committed to this that it really was this beautiful transformative piece that we're all still so committed to. The resourcing, to be candid, is peanuts. If I can be as bold to say that.
Please.
You know, doing poverty work is you get poverty wages, but aren't you kind? Aren't you doing this? Aren't you sweet, honey? And I'm always like, and I'm smart. Game on. So there's other things where we aren't resourced to really do this work. And so when people are asking me to fly somewhere and speak about it and show it and really be in it, I have to say, I don't have a budget. I'm sorry.
Right.
And they're like, oh, we'll fly you. And then I feel guilt because it should be to the nonprofits or the people with lived expertise. But anyway, so that's some of the isms, but I think that's everywhere. We are all under-resourced to really do this work. And we cannot continue to be responsive to crises that are a result of inequities. We have to look at, the front and be proactive rather than always reactive. And so we have to do a better job of building that case, and we will. But the governor just did put us in his budget. So our team now has $500,000 to actually
which is still close to nothing in a state budget.
Yeah. Here you go. Yes, but I will tell you, we have relied on the good graces of philanthropy to fund a lot of our innovation. Government dollars don't fund innovation. They fund programs or things that have already been proven, or they know the ROI, all of those things. And because philanthropy sees that we want to innovate, they have been able to partner with us. And when we get those dollars, I give every last dollar and penny to the community to incent them to partner with us. And then my superpower is writing as fast as you talk. So I do all of the notes with the community. I'm in there with them. I do the report, so the onus isn't on them. And now we co-create everything. So even the community assemblies that just got passed, yesterday we had a last minute meeting with community because a senator asked for all of these questions about community assemblies. And the community called me and said, will you help co-create with me? So it wasn't me going to them to say, help co-create. So it's now this reciprocal relationship that's dynamic and really based on trust and, commitment to the work.
And Ramin might not have tooted his own horn, so I'll do it for him. But if you want him to learn about citizen assemblies, Ramin is the go-to guy. So,
thanks for that. And one quick follow-up: is there any good long-form journalism that has really celebrated the ins and outs of the journey that you've? Okay, so maybe that's another request to us as communities is to put some good good folks on the trail, because this is a story, again, I'm celebrating, and I think many others we could all be learning from. So,
Yeah, Elizabeth
and I'm going to go on
Garlow.
mute with all the background noise.
Yeah, and you have your baby, but Elizabeth Garlow from the New Economy. Is it new? No, New Economy.
New America.
New America. Oh,
Yeah.
forgive me. She said she really wants to do a narrative build because we don't spend the time doing that and talking about the nuance of the work. So anyway, she said she's very interested in that too.
Great. We have time for one more question, and I'm going to take it.
Anybody can email me. I'll put it in the chat.
Well, my question is actually sort of the inverse of Ramin's, because you did mention to me when we first met that this was initiated by the governor. I believe he's finishing his second term and not up for re-election. I don't know if
That's right.
Yeah. So is there any fear that another administration could come in and dismantle this, or have enough anchors been placed in to prevent that from being an administration to administration goal?
Great question. So we are in statute that the economic justice team must be the advisory group to others. So that is in statute. But sure, any governor can come in and say, this is what I want, and get rid of anybody or anything. But we have all of the legislative leads for all of the agencies are putting it in their plans, because you have to have a transition document and a transition plan about the strength of this work and the cross-agency intersectionality of this effort. So sure, we should be worried, but the fact that everyone said they'll put it in their transition plans, not just DSHS, but other agencies are putting it in. And even the commission, I just talked to the LGBTQ commission. He's like, nope, I'm putting it in. And I didn't even ask him. So
Right.
it's a testament to the work, the relationships, and the power of how we've done this.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us, hopefully, let's give Lindsay an amazing hand for not only talking 25 minutes straight, but for doing an amazing job presenting such clear language, and just everything that you've done the last several years is so, I mean, it gives me a lot of hope, and I'm assuming it does others here as well, and definitely want to celebrate you and everybody else who's been doing this work. So thank you so much for coming and sharing the knowledge. And sorry we couldn't fly you down like you normally like in first class style, but
I've never flown first class. We are good.
but we got you here via Zoom, and thanks for taking the time. I greatly appreciate it. And of course, inviting you to stick around for the overtime,
Great.
or whatever we're calling it. And Jeremy, I'm gonna ask you to do your thing.
Great. Just going to share this slide. So We All California has a number of events coming up, and we hope you'll continue to join us online for these. We're starting a book club series next year, and so next month in January. We'll be reading Jane McAlevy's No Shortcuts: Organizing for Power, and our first book club meeting will be on January 16th. The week after that, on January 23rd, we're going to do a We All 101 session where we just talk about what a well-being economy is and ways that we can get there. In February, we'll be meeting with Matt Begar, who will present on place-based systems change, strategies for renewing nature, community, and local wealth. And then we have a couple of events coming up without dates yet, but we hope you'll stay tuned and follow up with us to find out when Devin Gray will be speaking from Ending Poverty in California to talk through his 2-year listening tour in California and what he learned as a part of that listening tour. And then in addition, Basil Musharabash from Democracy Policy Network will be with us at some point in the next few months to discuss state-based legislative options to rein in monopolies. Then finally, one of our partners is the Poor People's Campaign based out of Southern California and Los Angeles. The Poor People's Campaign is hosting a nationwide series of rallies at state house capitals on March 2nd. And one of those rallies will be held at the State House in Sacramento. So if you'd like more information on that, please be in touch with us and we can connect you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. Rex.
Well, thank you so much, Lindsay, for such an engaging presentation on such an important topic. And thanks, Jeremy, for posting some of the upcoming programs we are going to be presenting. I wanted to encourage all of you to let us know what else you would like to hear about, that we can try to get a program together for you. We can take suggestions by email. I'm going to post my email if you want to write to me, or you can contact David Green. And as you can see, there's a lot happening around the country. And so we can try and coordinate this with some other states and some other organizations and keep the ball rolling. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Rex. And that is the end of the recorded portion. Lindsay, thank you again so much. You really are a great presenter. So appreciate it.